G'day. There are between 80 and 150 photographers at every F1 race. So how do they all make money? A variety of ways. Let me delve deeper for you. Let's start with the team. Every team employs at least one photographer at race events. Some have more. Those photographers have access to the team's garage, drivers, hospitality suite, and sometimes the factory away from the track. The teams might employ them direct or go via one of the big agencies. The top teams will typically have more than one photographer working for them. Take, for instance, Mercedes. They have Sammy, Jiri, Wolfgang, and Seb. Ferrari has Carlo, plus French photo agency DPPI shoots for them, while McLaren has Stephen T, and Red Bull uses Mark Thompson. They've been using him for years. Both are employed by Getty Images. Plus, Canon ambassador Vlad Rees has a contract with Red Bull for additional images. Now, if you land a gig with a team, a fair amount of the work's going to be involved in shooting things like guests in the hospitality suite or the garage or on the grid. You might have to shoot table settings at team events, or perhaps hang around in the driver's car park so sponsors like Ford can have pics of Max or Yuki getting out of their cars. It's not the glamour you might think it is. And these photographers will often be kitted out in team colours to differentiate them from other photographers. A couple of you have asked, would I ever work for the team? My answer is no. Yes, I get stunning pictures of those two drivers for that team, but at the expense of pretty much everything else in the paddock, and it would also pull me away from my main focus, which I'll go into later. Some drivers employ their own photographers too. Some are paid for by the team but just focus on documenting the movements of that one driver. Others are paid directly by the driver. Lewis has used a couple of photographers over the years and employed them directly. Charles has Antoine Truchet, while his brother shoots for Pierre Gasly. Richard Pardon works with George Russell. Lando has Ash Bibby at certain events, and Kimi Antonelli has his own photographer. But how do they get these jobs? Well, I don't think they're advertised. Typically, the team or driver will know of their work and contact them directly. That photographer will then shadow the driver the whole weekend. They'll know his movements each day and sometimes even stay in the same hotels as the driver. They might also get called up for shoots outside of track hours, away from the track. And what would they earn for such a gig? Well, I'll get into that shortly. Let's go back to the photo agencies. There are a number operating in the paddock, but the biggest by far is Getty Images. They have around 12 photographers shooting at every race. Why so many? Well, they have contracts with most of the teams, a good number of sponsors, and even Formula One. Most publications and media outlets around the world have contracts with Getty. So in terms of reach, there is no agency bigger. I'm a contributor for Getty. In other words, I'm not employed by them, but I certainly sell my pictures through their site. And they pop up on websites and in publications all around the world. They also have some of the best staff shooters going around, the likes of Clive Mason, who's a Nikon ambassador, Clive Rose, Lars Barron, and Bryn Lennon. They also bought LAT Images and Shutterstock recently, so really, they are a monster organisation. XPB is another agency. They have 4 photographers who work with Williams and a number of other clients. And then there's French agency DPPI, who also bring a number of photographers to every race. Other agencies like Reuters and AFP are present, but they typically don't have anywhere near the number of photographers solely devoted to Formula One over the 24-race calendar. That leaves more than half of the photographers in the paddock as freelancers. They'll provide images to magazines, websites, or YouTube channels, perhaps on a per-image basis, but more likely on an agreed rate per event. How much they charge depends on how many images they need, whether they want exclusivity, and how quickly they want the images. I can send a picture directly from my camera to a Dropbox via my Google Pixel phone in a minute or so if the internet's good. It's not edited, but it gets there quickly, and if a client wants images quickly, they would typically pay a premium. Sponsors sometimes require photographers to focus solely on their signage, on track, and activations around the circuit. They can't just bring their own photographer. Instead, they'll approach individuals or agencies to quote on that scope of works. There are a handful of shooters like James Gasparotti who work exclusively for other categories like F2, F3 and F1 Academy. These snappers have contracts with teams and drivers and only pop up at the events that have those race categories racing. Tracks too need images. They'll send a brief to photographers or agencies outlining the scope. Sometimes a number of shooters will be required to cover things like aerial images, shots of fan zones and driver appearances, corporate functions, track action, and so on. Those contracts can run into the tens of thousands of dollars. Another way photographers make money is by doing technical photos, or spy photography. Yes, it's a real deal. Most of that work involves shooting for a team, but sometimes TV networks or publications commission them for images. But the team side of thing is interesting. Teams will typically ask for specific shots of other cars. Might be new front or rear wings, ride heights, side pods, and everything in between. During qualifying sessions and races, a number of photographers will be situated around the track with their cameras connected to a hard cable. They'll be photographing every single car and sending those pictures back immediately to their customer via this cable and high-speed internet. That picture is transmitted within a second, and the person receiving that picture studies every one of those images looking for things like tyre wear or damage to a particular car. That information can be crucial when it comes to strategy decisions. I should point out, this is not a 9-to-5 job. Typically, a photographer will arrive at, say, 8 a.m. and maybe leave at 7 p.m. 4 days in a row. Plus, there's travel pre and post event, and that eats into your social life. So it's not a job for everyone. Now, the money. Up front, very few photographers in the paddock are on a salary, and no one discusses money. Those full-time with agencies and some shooting for teams would be salaried staff, so they'd receive sick pay, holiday pay, superannuation, etc. And their pay rate? Look, annually, I'm guessing maybe US $30,000 to a couple of $100,000. But that's just a guess, an educated one, yes. And bear in mind, there'll be a few extra costs involved because accommodation, travel, food, transfers, insurance, and sometimes camera equipment are covered by the employer. But what about freelancers? Well, that's a completely different kettle of fish. They could be earning anywhere from minus $100,000 to $500,000 US. Maybe even more if they happen to capture one of the world's great F1 photos. But freelancers have to pay for all of those things that salaried employees don't, and that can add up very quickly. So where can we shoot when we're on track? Pretty much anywhere, with the exception of red zones. These are identified on a map that we get at the media centre. We can walk through those areas, but we can't stop and shoot. They're deemed too dangerous. We can't go into garages unless we're invited, and nor can we go into team hospitality suites. But in general, if we can see it, we can shoot it. Although sometimes we'll be asked not to take pictures, although that's rare. Going back to Vegas 2023, I think it was, we were asked not to publish photos of Adele's son. We could take the photos, but we just couldn't put them anywhere, so we didn't take the photos. What about pit lane? Yes, we can shoot in there. There are a certain number of photo tabards made available to shoot in the 3 practice sessions, or 1 if it's a sprint weekend, and they're handed out by the FIA. And that's the only thing we need to do is wear a tabard. Although a friend of mine in the US mentioned that he, to shoot a certain series, had to wear a full-on race suit and a helmet to shoot in pit lane because they do refuelling there. Thankfully, that's not a stipulation in F1 because there's no refuelling in pit lane. And yes, we can shoot from pit wall, but there are an even fewer number of photo tabards made available for that. The most highly prized access would be on the grid prior to the start of a race. Anyone who's a permanently accredited shooter has automatic access now, and I'll go into that a little bit later. For those accredited race by race, they will have to battle for the remaining spots on the grid. And when it comes to Parc Ferme, it's simply a matter of queuing up. The earlier you get there, the better spot you get at Parc Ferme, and of course you can then move over and shoot the podium. No restrictions there whatsoever. So how does it work with the images that we shoot? Well, they remain our property. We own the rights to them. Some photographers have told me that they shoot smaller series with the owners of the series demanding free access to all of the pics that they shoot. That seems bizarre, and thankfully that does not go on in Formula One. Of the 150 or so photographers accredited by the FIA, fewer than a dozen will attend every race this year. I'll be one of them, providing I'm not sick. In fact, I've not missed a race for the last 4.5 years. But the fellow who's probably had the longest streak in terms of races in a row would be this man, Charles Coates. He's a machine. I reckon he's probably not missed a race in 7 years. I've mentioned a couple of times accreditation because you need to be accredited to shoot. I applied in 2017 and pretty much told the FIA what I thought I could do for the sport, and I was fortunate to apply at the right time, I think. And in that first year, I had to apply for each race at least 4 weeks out. But pretty much, if you got accredited for Monaco, because that is the tightest in terms of media centres, you'll be accredited for the whole year. And that's what happened. I did all the races, and that automatically guaranteed me a permanent pass for 2018. So I didn't have to apply race by race. I could turn up at any race that I wanted to, and as long as I did 14 in that year, I got my permanent pass for the next year. Now, in terms of what the FIA requires for you to be accredited, I gather it changes from time to time, so if you're interested, I'd suggest you go and have a look at the media page on their website. But also know that the local organiser has a number of media passes that they can hand out to local media in their area. I sometimes get questions about what formal training is required to be an F1 photographer. None at all. It's not like you have to have a super licence, say for a driver. Pretty much it's up to the FIA to determine who they allow to shoot the sport. As a freelancer, though, I had to fund several years of losses before the business turned a profit. But trust me, my model is completely different to pretty much everyone else in the paddock. I have several income streams. I shoot for a couple of corporate clients, and that might mean shooting several hundred people on the grid on a Thursday or a Saturday night. I might find myself shooting events in the paddock club or on the podium late in the evening. As I mentioned earlier, I sell my people pictures through Getty Images, with the car pictures going up to ProStarPics.com, and they're sold for personal, commercial or editorial use. I do presentations and speeches for a number of clients, both at the track and away from it. I do one-to-one video calls with fans or photographers wanting to improve their skills and learn more about getting into the industry. I produce mini coffee table photo books for every race and every driver. But one of my main focuses is on YouTube, and that's where you're watching me here, for most of you anyway. My YouTube subscriber numbers are up 25% just in 4 months, and should be up 50% by the end of the year. Plus, I work with a range of sponsors, the likes of Bitdefender, MSC, Shell, IncyJets and Quadlock, promoting their products and services to you and your mates online. And having some 2 million followers across my social media platforms provides me with a large audience to promote my own merchandise, like these bucket hats available at the shop at kimelman.com. And I collaborate with a number of drivers doing hand-signed and numbered prints. Oh, and one final thing, wall art. Anything from an A4 print up to something big enough to cover a garage wall. There's no doubt that turning a profit in this game is tricky, considering there are 24 races all over the world. But for those of us lucky enough to be involved in shooting the sport, it offers one of the most exhilarating careers going around. I should say that I would get a dozen requests a week from people saying, how can I become an F1 photographer? I tell them the exact same thing. Go to the FIA website, have a look at the media page and see what their criteria is at present. I imagine it's changed since when I started, but if you're good at your craft and get noticed by the right people, you could be in luck. Well, I do trust you've learnt a thing or two, and if you have and you've liked the video, please hit the like button. And for those not subscribed, I'm wondering why, and inviting you to remedy that situation. And for a whole lot of extra content, merchandise and stuff, this is where you need to look. Thanks for watching, and stay passionate. Recording.